Judy Barnes-Baker, what's going on?
Well, I'm still here. I'm doing well. I've had some rough times, but I'm getting through it.
Well, I have known you for a very long time, like from the time I started blogging, which happened in 2005. You weren't very far behind me, and I remember
2007.
Oh, you came around.
I was in 2007.
Yeah, so you came a couple years after I came online. I'd been blogging a couple of years, podcasting a year, and then you come along. You were the author of a book called Carb Wars, which I still love to this day. I always thought it was a really creative title. And yeah, you've just been doing your thing out there. I've been following you for a little while and all the things that you're doing online. I think the work you've done, what got you started was that beautiful man that was helping you get set up with the techie stuff. I remember you told me about it when you were on my podcast many moons ago now. Man, it has been a decade ago since you've been on my podcast. So it's a long time coming, Judy.
It has. It's been a while.
So
I haven't seen you for 6 years.
Wow. Yeah, it has been a while. Yeah, we used to see each other at different conferences, but not anymore. Right. But she is on Twitter. She's one of the Twitter people. You're brave to be just on Twitter, and Facebook's kind of where you hang out. You don't do Instagram or some of the other ones, but
not yet. I'm resisting.
She's at _BB. Judy_BB, excuse me, at Judy_BB for Judy Barnes-Baker. But yeah, Carb Wars was one of my favorite books. I remember you kind of sent me the idea for it, and I was like, really like that. Like it really resonated with me that would be something that people would relate to. And of course you were making recipes, but you're more than a recipe maker. Like I love it when I hear out of people's mouths that make recipes, especially low carb and keto, where there's more behind it. Like you understand the mechanisms of what's going on. You know the why of restricting carbohydrates being a healthy thing. You know that there's importance in getting micronutrients into your body. And what you've discovered and why you're here today is because you've come across something that I think a lot of people don't know about. I don't really hear anybody talk about it, even the big boys that are talking all the nerdy science stuff. I'm not hearing them talk about what we're going to share here on today's show. So why don't you kind of tell the story how you stumbled upon this, and then we'll dig into it.
Okay. One thing I should say in the beginning is that I'm not a doctor. I don't have a science background at all. You know, I've learned what I learned from other people who do have those credentials and doing a lot of research and reading but a lot of it for me has been trial and error because when you see what works, then you know that you're onto something. But the last time I saw you was after the 2014 cruise. And when I got back, shortly after I got back, I started having terrible allergies. I didn't know they were allergies. I just knew that I had these awful itchy rashes with big blisters, and nobody could tell me what they were. And they treated me for like 6 months as if it were an infection. So I had all these antibiotics. And finally they did a biopsy and said, no, it's autoimmune. Well, I've had autoimmune problems most of my life, but most of them, the worst of them started about 25 years ago. And now in retrospect, I realize that was when I was using a Retin-A cream, skin cream. You know, a lot of women were using it and we looked very good. It really makes you look good because it kills the top layer of your skin. So it gets rid of that. And the thing that kills the skin is vitamin A. It kills cells.
Can you explain how does that work? Is it like smooth out?
It's an acid, it burns. It burns cells. Anyway, I had a couple of other things since then, but one of them, I'd be trying to fix one thing when something else would happen. And you may have seen my post about when my husband had a cardiac arrest, which was very stressful, of course.
Yeah.
It was caused by his blood pressure medication. And and after that, about 2 or 3 months after that, I started getting really sick. And I just got sicker and sicker and weaker. And doctors were no help. They couldn't tell me what was going on.
What
and
was going on initially? Like, obviously, you've been in the health space for a little while. What was your initial thinking of what this was?
I had no idea. I didn't know. I didn't know what it was. And it got really bad. I was losing weight quickly. I was passing out. I was having, all these terrible symptoms and pain, a lot of pain and headaches, the kind of headaches that get worse when you lay down. It's like fluid on your brain type headaches. And at one point, my husband even took me to the emergency room, and I was there for a couple of hours. They told me that they had given me every test they had, and there was nothing wrong with me, and they sent me home. And
Wow.
I was almost unconscious when they sent me home. I was down to 97 pounds, and nothing was wrong with me. But I found out later that they don't normally test you for cortisol. That's not one of the tests they have in the emergency room, and it never occurred to them. The reason that nobody knew what was wrong with me is because my blood tests always looked okay. And I suspect that was because of my diet.
Right.
Because what cortisol does, the adrenal gland produces cortisol, which regulates blood sugar. And if you're running on fat, then maybe you don't get the symptoms that most people would get.
Right.
As if they were eating sugar, they wouldn't get that. And the normal symptom of not having cortisol is that your potassium, let me see if I get it right, your salt goes very low and potassium goes high, or vice versa, I forget. And mine didn't. So for 6 months, I was undiagnosed.
Wow.
And normally, if you look up adrenal failure, Addison's disease is one form of it. It says that you will live for 3 days, and then you will go into a coma and die if you don't get help. And it was actually, my husband took me to like 20 different doctors. I mean, he just started going through the phone book for every specialty.
Yeah.
And I was too sick to do anything. I couldn't read. My eyes were blurry. It was terrible. And so he just started, I was in a wheelchair at that point. He just started taking me from one doctor to the next, hoping to find one who would recognize something. And finally, we went to a rheumatologist who said, I have no idea why you're so sick. But he said, I'm going to give you some prednisone to buy you a little time. But he would only give me 10 days worth.
Wow.
Because he said it has terrible side effects.
Right.
So, and it had worn off by the time I went to the next doctor, who actually turned out to be a naturopath at Bastyr University. And we would never have thought of going to her, except that a friend recommended her, and we kind of felt, obligated to take the advice. And she was the only one who looked at my symptoms and not my test.
Yeah.
And she looked at my symptoms and said, that sounds like Addison's to me. So she did a cortisol test, and I don't know what units they measure it in, but normal is 7, and I was 1.
Whoa.
And that was after having been on prednisone for a while. So I probably wasn't making any. So she sent me to an endocrinologist, and the endocrinologist says, no, you don't have Addison's disease. And I said, but here's my test. And she still didn't believe it. But she gave me, what I was trying to do was get off the prednisone, because I just thought that was bad. And in fact, that the endocrinologist just recently, I asked her to retest me for cortisol to see if I had recovered function at all, if my adrenals had healed, which I hope they will, and I think they might. And she said, I never did believe that you had that. And the test came back showing like 0.6.
Wow.
And I got a message from her saying, do not reduce your dose under any circumstances. So I don't have to argue that point with her anymore. So I was trying to get off the prednisone, and actually a doctor that I had known from Facebook contacted me and said, I do this all the time, I can help you. So I went to her, and she put me on a lot of supplements and some medications and things. But one of the things she put me on was 25,000 units of vitamin A, which is kind of a Weston A. Price sort of
super
view of things, that this boosts your immune system, and I was too sick at that point to do much of anything. If she'd told me to jump off a bridge and it would help, I would have done it. So I took it for a while, but I kept getting sicker and sicker. And I was suspicious of that high a dose. And occasionally I skipped one just because I was a little worried about it.
So, Judy, was it just the isolated vitamin A, or was it all the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and
It was just vitamin A.
Okay.
I was taking other stuff separately,
right.
But there was 25,000 vitamin A. And she said, I had asked her about that high dose, and she said that's the only amount that this prominent pharmacy makes. So, like that was what they thought was the best. So it was January 6th of 2018, year and a half ago, that I reached some kind of acute level, and I just went down totally. I had all the terrible symptoms of acute poisoning. I was throwing up, I had diarrhea, I couldn't walk, I was off balance, my head hurt. It was terrible. And I couldn't read. I got up that morning and tried to read the newspaper, and I couldn't read the words. My vision was gone. So, and we were in a restaurant for a while. I had thought, well, I'll go ahead and go. We had planned to meet some people there and see if I get better. And that was a big mistake. I was so afraid that I would start throwing up in the restaurant and gross everybody out. But anyway, so at that point, I knew what it was. I pretty much knew what it was. And I went home and looked up on the computer. As soon as I could get my eyes to work, I looked on the computer to see what the symptoms of vitamin A poisoning were. And there it was, word for word, wow. Exactly what was happening to me. Itching, all over itching is another symptom. And so I immediately quit taking the vitamin A, of course. And within 3 days, a lot of my symptoms had gone away. My lips had been cracked and peeling, and my eyes were burning. And so at that point, I knew what was wrong and what was causing it, but trying to recover from it was the next hurdle. So I started looking online for advice, and my doctor was, she said, "Oh, you just have the flu." So I started looking online, treatments for vitamin A poisoning, treatments for vitamin A toxicity, all these things. And I came across this guy named Grant Genereux, and it was like a miracle. I mean, I credit this guy with saving my life. He's fantastic. And he was a guy who had terrible problems himself that were undiagnosed. He didn't know what to do about it. He had head to toe eczema. He had been diagnosed with fatal kidney disease. He had diabetes. He had chronic fatigue. He had fibromyalgia, which I did too. These are all vitamin A autoimmune reactions. And he had gone to a doctor who told him that, he said, you've got maybe 4 or 5 years, but the last few will be so bad you'll be sorry from the kidney disease. So he started researching, and he's obviously much better at it than I am. He's really he has 2 degrees, none of them anything related to the medical fields. Probably if he had been in the medical field, he would never have done this. He would have had all these preconceived ideas that he already knew.
Yeah.
They know these things are true, so you don't look at those. So he was starting from scratch, and he was looking at the statistics of the world of what different conditions happen in certain areas. And he's Canadian, he's from Alberta. But he saw that there were clusters of things here and there. And he said to him that meant that this was, of course, something that we're all getting, but because it's in clusters, then it has to be something that's regional. And he said that's got to be a poisoning. It's not a disease. It's not malnutrition. It's a poisoning.
So he started. What was it for him that he had vitamin E toxicity? Because I'm assuming he's not retinol cream.
Vitamin A. No, he claims he thought he was just eating a normal, healthy diet, but he may be extra sensitive to it. Some people are more sensitive to it than others. But what was I saying? He started looking at these clusters, and when he realized, which people in different places were worse, then he started looking at the diet of everybody, modern people, trying to see which elements of our diet could have that effect. And he came up with the conclusion that there was absolutely only one that can have such devastating effects. And these are well known. You can look anywhere at, the effects of vitamin A, and you will find it. And there's lots of tests. The scientists start with this. They know that it can be deadly. They know that it's a very potent toxin. But they all think, well, you need this much. But if you get too much, then it's very bad. But if you stay below this, then you have to have it. So the very first vitamin ever discovered was vitamin A.
Right.
And it was back in like the early 1900s, the 1920s. And the two guys that did the study that was the definitive study that established it as a vitamin. And a vitamin is something that you have to have that your body can't make. So it's something that you have to get from outside. And they did a rat study. It was Wolbach and Howe, I think, were the names. And they were giving their lab rats, a diet that they thought had 0 vitamin A in it. There's a couple of problems with that, is because in the 20s, retinoic acid, the active form of vitamin A, the one that does the damage, had not been discovered yet. So, they were dealing with a lot of unknowns, but they didn't know what they didn't know. So they thought they were giving these rats a vitamin A-free diet, and the rats died in 3 or 4 weeks. And not just died, but they died horrible deaths. They had all these terrible symptoms. They quit eating their food, and the researchers actually had to put the food in their mouths to get them to eat it. Otherwise, they would not touch it, which might have been a clue that maybe there was something in that food that they didn't want.
Instinctively knew they didn't need.
Well, yeah. Grant said if they had looked, they probably would have seen burned places on their tongues where they were putting the food.
Wow.
So they concluded that was the effect of vitamin A deficiency, when it was really the effect of vitamin A poisoning. And one of the things they had put in their feed was casein, but it wasn't just casein. It was casein that had been boiled in alcohol for hours and hours and hours. And it doesn't have a lot of vitamin A in it, but when you reduce it, it's total retinoic acid, which is the most potent one and the one that does the most damage. But this part astonished me, and Grant lists these in one of his books. He says that in their study, in the preface to their study, when they published it, they list 7 studies done by their contemporaries that show the opposite effect, and they ignored them. They brushed them off, they explained them away. They were so confident that they were right that they didn't entertain the possibility. And nobody has been able to replicate those rat studies. And what Grant did is that he bought some hamsters or gerbils or something. I forget what he bought, or rats. and raised them himself. And he found the formulas that these scientists had used and replicated a truly vitamin A deficient diet and fed his rats. And they were healthy. They were fine. They live a normal lifespan. He had one batch of rats. And, he's so open and honest. He had one batch of rats. He was keeping them in his garage. And they suddenly all died. And he told everybody, my rats died. But he discovered that someone had closed the windows on the garage and that the temperature had gone up over 100 degrees. And so they had died of heat failure. But other people have done that. And he invites all of us to get little animals and raise them ourselves and then report what happens. And he gives you examples of different diets that you could give them that are free of vitamin A. So that to me is pretty definitive.
So what's the name of some of his books that you read in the midst of this?
Okay, they're all ebooks and they're on his site. The first one is Extinguishing the Fires of Hell. Okay. And that was the eczema, that was the fires of hell that he was talking about. The second book is Poisoning for Profit. And the third one is about breast cancer. Okay. And then he has a lot of blog posts on his site.
So what's his site?
Oh, let me think. I should have written that down. It's ideas. Well, if you look up Grant Genero, you'll find it. It's
right.
Grant Genero.
Got it.
REUX on the end.
Okay.
So he after he did this, then he started writing these books after he had cured himself, and he was very, very sicker, maybe sicker than I was. I don't know. I would probably have been dead in a few more days, but he thought that he needed to share this. He needed to tell people because all of he believes that all of the autoimmune diseases that we have are caused by excess vitamin A. And he's very humble. He says this is a theory, and he does have a lot of data. He has found a lot of research that a lot of times, they would do a research study, and if they came to a different conclusion from this original study, they would say inconclusive. Study was inconclusive. More research needed. They explain it away because they know what they already know. So he started writing these books, and so that's when I found him. And he's done a lot of blog posts too. About once a month, he's researching all the time, and he comes out with a new book. They're all free. He doesn't charge for anything. He gets no money at all from this. He has a full-time job, and he has degrees in geology and engineering. So we know how good some of these engineers are at tackling the health problems.
Some of the best people in nutritional health right now are engineers.
Right.
Dave Feldman and Ivor Cummins. I mean, there's some big names that are doing the nerdy. Can we back up a little bit? Because what are some of the sources of vitamin A? Obviously, for you, it was this retinol cream on your face and the different parts of your body, which kind of absorbed into your body. What would the average, keto dieter, for example, in the effort to get these foods in our body, what are those foods that could be?
Well, you're not going to like the answer. Top of the list. Absolutely, the top of the list is liver.
Okay.
And after that is egg yolks. The things that are high in vitamin A. The thing about being poisoned with vitamin A, though, is that after you detox, you're cured. You can go back to eating normally as long as you don't do it again and get in trouble again. But this is a cure. Dr. Bernstein says that low carb is a solution, not a cure. We've always known that this was a solution. It's a workaround. We didn't know what was causing all these things, these epidemics.
I was telling the listeners, Richard Bernstein is who you're referring to.
What did I say? Dr. Bernstein?
You just said Dr. Bernstein. I was just trying.
Richard Bernstein, the diabetes expert.
Well known enough. He can be called Dr. Bernstein, and they should know.
We all know. Probably everybody listening to you knows who he is.
Yeah.
So Dr. Bernstein says this is low carb is a solution, not a cure, but low A is a cure. It is a cure. After you have detoxed your excess vitamin A, you can go back to eating normally, and you don't have to be as strict, and you won't have a weight problem anymore.
So liver and egg yolks. What else?
Dairy, the casein is what poisoned the rats.
Yeah.
And there's vitamin A is high in a lot of vegetables, especially kale, carrots, sweet potatoes. Actually, the one this surprised me is the one that has the most is pumpkin. So when you come to pumpkin season, a lot of people are going to get an overload. But the plant source vitamin A is not absorbed at the same rate as the animal source. So the animal source is more potent. People have still died from eating carrots.
Right.
If you eat too many carrots, it can kill you from the vitamin A in it.
So at what point do you become this level of toxicity? Because, some people may be scared away. Don't get us wrong. Liver is healthy. Egg yolks are healthy. Kale is healthy in the right context. But
only if you have room to store the vitamin A.
Right. That's where I'm going, Judy.
Once you've maxed it out, and that's why as you get older, you get sicker. It's because you're filling up your vitamin A stores.
So what strips the body of vitamin A so that if you have too much of it, you can actually have it come down besides the elimination diet you were talking about?
Time, not getting any more coming in.
Okay, eliminate.
You use up a tiny bit every day, but it's a fat-soluble vitamin. So
Right.
What you eat, it stays there. I had some notes, which I'm sure I'll never be able to find what I'm looking for when I need to say it, but the amount of vitamin A in 3 ounces of liver is like 730 times the daily requirement.
Whoa.
So if you eat liver every day, you're getting way, way, way ahead in your vitamin A storage. And you can't, it's hard to get it out. It's easy to get too much. It's hard to get it out. I was talking to one guy who said vitamin A can't be bad for us. It's in everything. God put it in everything. It's got to be good for us. And I said, God doesn't want you to live forever. And I have come to the conclusion that retin A it's the limiting factor to our lifespan. And that's a pretty drastic thing to say. Grant didn't say that. That's what I said. But if you look at all the symptoms of vitamin A toxicity, we ascribe them as being symptoms of aging. Vitamin A it's not only toxic to your tissues, but it also draws calcium out of your bones because it's an acid, so the calcium comes out to buffer it. So you get all these autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and things that are involved with the calcium balance. And I think fibromyalgia is caused by calcium balance too, because calcium is the signal that tells muscles to contract. And if the muscles stay contracted all the time, they're going to be tired and they're going to hurt. And that's a pretty good description of vitamin A. It also causes calcium, when it pulls it out of the bones, it causes it to be deposited in places where it doesn't belong.
Right.
And in my first blog post about this, I have a picture of an X-ray of a woman who was, she had been taking retinoic acid for treatment for a skin disease. And it had caused her bones, her skeleton to calcify. And there was an X-ray of her elbows showing extra bone growing around her elbows. And they called it flowing ossification that she had. And I started the first symptom I had after using this cream was bone spurs in my knees. So I was growing extra bone, making bone spurs there and probably other places too. But my knees are still my biggest problem. I'm hoping. But everything that is caused by vitamin A will go away. It's possible that some people may have some kidney damage or some liver damage that stays, but nearly everything will go away. And that's astonishing. And if you look at the comment threads on some of these vitamin A sites, you will see what people are seeing. They're seeing the changes that they're seeing. Even like if you imagine somebody with rheumatoid arthritis, you know how they have these gnarled hands. Mm-hmm. That's retin A. That's wow. Retinoic acid causing that. And I would love to have somebody who has that, maybe somebody who's listening to you does, who would try this and see if their hands straighten out. And if so, please take a picture and send it to us. Take a picture before and after.
So, Judy, is there a blood test or some other kind of measurement that you can figure out your level of vitamin A?
The first thing I did after I realized what was going on, of course, was get a test. The problem is, and it came out being like normal. But the problem is they don't have a good test for retinoic acid. They test for retinol. Retinol is in the blood, and it's an inactive form of vitamin A. It doesn't do any damage in your blood. It's when it becomes retinoic acid that it starts doing the damage. And the only way you can test for your vitamin A level is by doing multiple tests and comparing them. And most doctors don't do that. Some scientists can do it, right, but they don't know that it's a problem anyway, so they have no motivation to do it. If I could find out a way to get tested, I would do it. But you can diagnose yourself with your symptoms. If you have an autoimmune symptom, you probably have too much vitamin A, or if you're overweight. And this is what I thought was really exciting. And this was, my goal, part of my goal in wanting to talk to you was to try to get you to try this. Because people trust you. They know you're telling the truth, and you know that you will be honest about your results. And I would love to see you try this and see what effect it has on it. Grant did a survey recently where he had all the people who are following his website fill out a questionnaire. And he was going through the data, and he realized, well, that's a different story. But he said that the people who had the most weight to lose were the ones who lost it the quickest. And I know I lost 30 pounds. I lost, a pound a week without doing anything particular. And I got down to, I'm 118 now, 120. I got down to that point and I stopped losing because the fat makes retinol binding protein. And when you have bare retinoic acid, it is toxic. So your body wraps it in fat, and the fat makes this retinol binding protein, which also covers it up to protect you from it. And the more retinoic acid you have, the more fat you need to enclose it and protect you from it. So, and people like you who gain weight easily but don't get sick, that's protecting you from the autoimmune diseases that you would be getting from the retinoic acid.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm explaining this well or not, but read Grant's stuff. He does a good job of explaining it.
Yeah, it certainly is an intriguing thing. And it's one reason I wanted to have you on here today. And it's certainly something you don't hear anybody talking about. Every context of vitamin A is, A, D, E, and K. They're your superstars in your fat.
Right. And if you have the right balance, you'll be fine. But that's just not true. It's just not true. And the fact that we have all these epidemics. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, because generally we have a vitamin D deficiency. Generally we have a vitamin K deficiency. So A is just, I guess, that exception amongst the fat-soluble vitamins of having an overload. I guess it doesn't exit the body. It's not used up near like the other fat-soluble vitamins.
Actually, vitamin A is not a vitamin.
Okay, go.
It's not a vitamin. These first guys that did this first test, were the ones that named the first vitamin, and they were wrong. This is not a vitamin. It's just it's a toxin that's in, and it may have had a use because back when, people were living wild in the woods, you didn't have soap, you didn't have disinfectant, you ate what you picked up, you didn't wash your hands, They had a lot of organisms to fight off. Viruses, bacteria, parasites. And when someone has an infection, their vitamin A level goes down because it's used up. So I assume that it is getting used up by killing the things that you're infected with. But if there are no things that you're infected with, then it's killing you. It's killing your normal cells. If when your immune system has no target, it targets the wrong thing.
Could it be argued that someone with high vitamin A might be at a better chance against COVID-19?
No, actually, they're worse.
Okay.
And one of Grant's recent blog posts, he looked into that. It causes viruses to replicate more quickly. Read his article about it. It's what it does, it just screws up your immune system. Most of the people who are dying from COVID are people with metabolic syndrome and diabetes.
Right.
They're the majority of people are people have those things. They're probably also taking medications.
Yes.
And what most of our medications do, what do they have? They have nothing.
Vitamin.
It's autoimmune disease, so they turn off your immune system.
Right.
So Humira, all of those things for skin conditions and everything, they turn off your immune system. And they all come with warnings, say, if you have an infection, do not take this. If you've been to a country where there are funguses, do not take this, because they know you have no defense.
So one of the popular trends the last few years has been fasting. In fact, I wrote a whole book about fasting. Yes. Jason Fung. Would fasting, kind of like fasting gives you the benefit with autophagy, cleaning up the old dead proteins in your body, would it accelerate the removal of vitamin A or do something? Absolutely. Because when you don't have any coming in, then you can get more coming out. In fact, what's his name? The doctor that has the cancer treatment, Seyfried, who recommends that you fast, I think 3 weeks, 4 times a year to prevent cancer. Right.
And that makes perfect sense, because when you're fasting, you're using up vitamin A. And some cancers are infectious, but some are autoimmune. So it would certainly help with that. But if you eat a lot of vitamin A rich foods when you're not fasting, then you're going to counteract that.
Yeah, we've heard so many things about vitamin A over the years. I know the kind of traditional diet people, like the Weston A. Price Foundation, they like to say, well, Weston Price saw in the Inuit that they had lots and lots of foods that would help with vitamin A.
I have a post about that. I started looking into it, and I even said that.
It's called a leading question to somebody that I knew had knowledge. So.
In my first book, I quoted Stephenson, the anthropologist that lived with them, about what they ate, but he said that their average lifespan is 70 years instead of 80. The normal lifespan at that time in Europe was 80, but the Inuit died at 70. So they maxed out their storage earlier. But also, a little further research, I discovered, the biggest danger from vitamin A is birth defects. And it's like the thalidomide. Babies are born with these horrible defects, without limbs and other things. And they get that same effect with vitamin A. And if you want to see what vitamin A does to you, look up Accutane, which was a medication. It still is a medication they use sometimes for really bad acne. but it is pure retinoic acid. And they tell you on the in the sheet that comes with it, you have to sign a form, a pledge, promising that if you take Accutane, you will use 2 different kinds of birth control. And they tell you, and this is a hint, they don't want to say abortion, but it says, and have a backup plan in case you get pregnant anyway.
Wow.
Because it is, and it says, taking Accutane in any amount for any length of time has risks of major birth defects.
Wow.
So that's, and you know, lots of other things too. So it's just astonishing that we see these things and we know these things and people don't make the connection.
So Judy, if this is such a big problem, and obviously you've outlined very clearly it is, why aren't researchers looking at this closer? Why aren't we hearing it from the big boys? Where's the disconnect between this message you're sharing here today and them?
Well, we know well how that goes. You know, it's taken us 50 years to get people to think, to realize that sugar is not good for you. You know, once people have something set in their mind, you know, they think something is true, it's very hard to change them. And now if you say the wrong thing, you get banned from different places. You know, you can't talk about vaccines without getting your stuff removed. But there is a lot of research out there. If you just know how, if you read it carefully, you will see, and you know, if it's good research, it will show the truth. You can tell. And there is one man, and I don't think I'm going to give you his name because he is getting funding, government funding for his studies, and he is doing good research and getting good results, which eventually I hope will get out. But it's, you know, the stigma is so bad at this point that I don't want him to lose his funding if the word gets out that this is what he's doing.
Please don't. That's good news to know that there is somebody working on it from the research realm. It just seems to me that if this is as major an issue, and I'm so happy, by the way, that you're doing better. You're one of the kindest people I've ever met in my life, and so
thank you.
I would have cried if you died. And so I'm glad you're here to be doing well. You're kicking still. You're doing really well today, other than the bone spurs in your knees.
Yes, I think I'm almost there. I can tell. I have a ways to go, and it's taken me longer than most people. It depends on how sick you were when you started, how old you were. You know, people clear at different rates. But if you're young and you have no symptoms, you should clear very quickly, and then you can start over. You know, you've emptied your storage tanks, and you don't have to worry about it, at least for a while. You just, but knowing what you know not to do the things that are going to make it come back. So yeah, I was close enough to dying, you know, that I had made peace with it. You know, I wasn't afraid. In fact, I was just kind of thinking, if I'm going to die anyway, I'd like to just get it over with because this hurts too bad.
Yeah. 7 in a wheelchair, husband taking you to 20 different doctors. I mean, that had to be a frantic time. I wondered what happened to you, because I used to see you comment all over Facebook.
Right. Well, I had 2 times when I was absent for almost a year at a time. Yeah. So I'm sure I lost a lot of followers who thought I was not around anymore. But then I come back. I'm not 100% yet. You know, one of the first things that goes is your focus and concentration. You know, you can't think straight. And you can probably tell from listening to me that I'm not 100% there yet. But I'm motivated to get this out because nobody else is doing it. And they're not doing it to us. And Grant is not, I mean, yeah, I started to tell you about this study that he did, and then I lost my train of thought, I guess. But he discovered when he did this survey, he said he was very concerned because people were telling him that they were doing fine and they were clearing and they were getting better. And then at about the 6-month point, they would suddenly stop getting better. And it would be a while, and then they would gradually start to inch up again. and he was calling it the 6-month setback, and he was trying to figure out what was causing that. So in reviewing these questionnaires that he got from people, he discovered that the people on a carnivore diet, a low vitamin A carnivore diet, didn't get the vitamin A, didn't get the 6-month setback, and I didn't get it. So I'm trying to stay low carb. So my pitch is to promote low A and low carb. And I got an email, a comment yesterday from someone who was doing it. I don't know if anybody else is doing that combination before or not, because Grant and this other doctor who has been working with him sort of don't necessarily advocate that. But Grant is leaning that way. In fact, he was scheduled to be a speaker at the conference called Carnivory.
Yeah.
And it got canceled, but I would love for him to have been there. And what he was hoping to do was recruit people who were doing a carnivore diet to have one group do low A carnivore and the other group to do regular carnivore, and then see, get the results from that. So, the more he learns, the more he learns. So I think, he's great. He would be on our side, I'm sure. And if you decided to do this, I'm sure he would help you. He would guide you through it, give you any advice that you needed.
Yeah, my major vice amongst those foods you said that are high in A is I eat a lot of what?
Egg yolks, right?
Because I have backyard chickens, and so I have unlimited amounts. Now, here's an interesting little side note, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the A issue, but hear me out. So I did a food sensitivity thing about 3 years ago, and I came back 5 times off the charts high for both yolks and for the whites. And so obviously I'm absorbing these things in my body to a greater degree probably than most, which if you think that through, maybe you're absorbing also the vitamins and minerals and other nutrients that are in it as well. So it is possible that I do have this vitamin A.
I was allergic to A too, and it may be that it's the vitamin A in it that we're reacting to. But we should take up a collection and buy you some ground beef. You can eat all the egg whites you want, just don't eat the yolks.
Well, no, there's a lot of avidin anti-nutrients in just the whites if you eat just the whites.
Yeah, well, the whites are there to protect the yolk, so they have to have stuff that kills things.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it is an interesting, like when you start digging deeper into this, it is so much more than low carb. It is so much more than eat real food. By the way, I did do an elimination diet with the eggs when I got that 5 times off the charts high sensitivity. I didn't eat any for like 9 months, like none. So that was probably my most prominent source of food intake that I cut out. And then I reintroduced them, and now I have them pretty hot and heavy again. So I probably need to be careful with that. But, oh, Judy, am I going to have chickens for a while to eat? Because I'm not eating.
Oh, that's a thought. Eat your chickens. Maybe you can find somebody to trade the yolks for something with, or freeze them for when you're cleared, then you can eat them.
That's true. I am so happy to hear you're doing a whole lot better today. Definitely keep us abreast of what's happening here, because I feel like this is an issue, and it's, again, why you were on today. I haven't heard anybody else talk about. And
I have one more comment I wanted to make sure I get in. I'm not sure how much time we have. We have tended to blame sugar for everything, and we blame that on Ansel Keys, and rightly so. But there's another thing that happened at the same time, and it's still Ansel Keys' fault, which is that when they passed these, well, I don't know if they were laws, but suggestions, when the government started telling us to reduce fat and reduce saturated fat, the companies all started making low-fat foods and selling them. And one of the things that they were recommending was non-fat and low-fat dairy. But then they got worried that people were going to be deficient in vitamins in low-fat dairy because they wouldn't be getting the fat-soluble vitamins.
Right.
So they started supplementing them with vitamin A. But because vitamin A is fat-soluble, it couldn't be the regular vitamin A that you would normally get. It had to be a water-soluble vitamin A. So they started using vitamin A palmitate. I think the natural one is vitamin A acetate,
Right.
maybe. So instead of going to the liver to be detoxed, it has to be excreted through the kidneys. And then the rate of kidney disease went through the roof, just in a few years.
Right.
And so we're not only getting a lot of extra vitamin A, which nobody in this country needs, but it's the wrong kind of vitamin A. So it was a double whammy from Ansel Keys.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's like vitamin D. They usually give you the wrong kind of vitamin D. You need the D3
Right.
that the doctors put you on. It's just, there's so many things, Judy. You and I have been at this for so long. We're a lot better than we've been, but every time we lift up another rock, we find more.
Yes. Right.
They're everywhere. Well, the LCLA diet, LCHF kind of had its heyday, and LCK, the ketogenic, but now we have LCLA, low carb, low A.
Yeah. Well, I'm still doing, I'm still doing high fat. I have 8-chain MCT oil every morning. And I try to stay pretty low carb at least until noon, but I still have allergies, so there's not a whole lot I can eat. So it's getting harder and harder for me to find stuff to eat. And I don't want to lose any more weight. If anything, I'd like to gain a little more. I think as you get older, you need a little extra fat. And my husband is not helping in this. He's been buying me cakes and pies and things because he thinks I'm too skinny. He got spooked when I got down to 97 pounds, So he doesn't like it when I lose weight.
By the way, how is he doing since the cardiac arrest? Is he doing better?
He's doing great. He is doing great. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, check her.
He's still living on cheese. He's not listening to me.
Well, guys, go check out Judy Barnes Baker on Twitter. She is at Judy_BB, and carbwars.blogspot.com is her blog. You still put out there. I had to
Go ahead.
I was going to say I had to get rid of my blog. It just got to be too much with the social media and the podcasts and everything. I stopped blogging.
I have 3 posts about this on my website where I've been able to put some thoughts into it, and I've been able to put citations so you can look and see where what I said came from. And it's www.carbwars.com, carbwarscookbooks.com, and then /Eureka, and that's the first one, and then it's /Eureka hyphen part 2 hyphen life, So there's 3 of them, but if I will try to make it more accessible in case anybody looks there.
Yeah, they'll find it if they go to your website. I have a feeling they won't have a hard time scrolling to find it. So,
yeah.
Oh, Judy, thank you so much for joining us, girl. It's been too long. Let's don't wait so long before we talk.
I know. Well, I'm back.
Back in.
I'm back. So we'll see. And you can watch my progress. One thing I wanted to show you. It's one of the signs of aging. If you have male pattern baldness, your hair will come back and your gray hair will go away. And if you can see, I still have a little gray on top, and it spreads out, so it looks like I have more gray. But look at this.
Wow.
So I'd say in another 3 or 4 months, that gray will be gone. I kind of like it. I may wind up frosting it, but this is my color, and it's coming back.
It's cool. Whoa.
And one of the doctors who's doing podcasts on this started out bald, and you can follow his progress. I don't know what he hasn't mentioned this, but he does seem to be growing a little hair in the front now.
Wow. Wow. Well, it's certainly something that we'll all keep an eye on. And thank you for helping my audience understand this topic a little better here today.
Well, I hope I did an okay job of it. Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I don't have any science background, but I can point you in the direction of the people who do.
You know,
So,
I either, but I think I've handled it for a little while educating the public. So you did a really good job.
right, right. Well, we need a spokesman like you to get the word out to people. So when you find something and you need to share it, then we're good people to have.
And for so long, Judy, I'm not stopping anytime soon. So, well, thank you again.